You've been told you're too quiet, too intense, too different. When you speak, the room doesn't just pause, it withdraws. Not because you're wrong, but because you're not like everyone else. Your thoughts move in unfamiliar directions. You notice the subtle undercurrents, the things that most people ignore. You question the world while others blindly follow its rules. And over time, people begin to pull away. You see them bonding over trends, jokes, and gossip that seem meaningless to you. They laugh while you sit in silence, lost in questions about existence, time, mortality. You try to join them, to laugh when expected, to smile on cue, but inside you feel foreign, as if you're playing a part in a play written for someone else. The thought begins to creep in. Maybe there's something fundamentally wrong with you. But what if the issue isn't internal? What if it's not a defect in your wiring but a mismatch with the environment? What if society was never designed to embrace people who think like you? Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher, believed that intelligence, raw, reflective intelligence, leads not to popularity but to isolation. The deeper your mind goes, the further it drifts from the crowd. It's not that others hate the truth, it's that they prefer comfort. And truth rarely offers comfort. In fact, truth, when spoken clearly, often makes people uneasy. That discomfort becomes a wall between you and them. The disconnection begins early. In childhood classrooms, you sit among peers, surrounded by laughter and chatter, yet you feel out of sync. Not superior, just separate. While others move through the day on autopilot, you're haunted by questions. Why do people lie so easily? Why do they speak without meaning anything they say? Why does conversation so often feel like noise rather than connection? It's not about being smarter than others. It's about being unable to silence the mind that won't stop asking why. That early sense of emotional and intellectual solitude is the beginning of a burden that few see, but many feel. As time passes, this silent burden grows. You begin to censor yourself. You've learned the price of honesty, that revealing too much of what you really think can make people defensive, can create discomfort, can end conversations. So you become careful, you say less, you share selectively, you pretend more. Not because you've changed, but because you're tired of misunderstanding, tired of defending your thoughts, tired of watching eyes glaze over when you speak from the soul. People interpret your reserve as arrogance. They think you're aloof or distant, but they don't see that what you truly want is connection, real connection. One that isn't built on surface noise but on mutual understanding. You carry ideas and insights that feel too heavy for casual conversations, so you keep them hidden. You lock away the questions. You dull your brilliance in order to survive in a world that rewards performance, not authenticity. This is the contradiction at the heart of modern life. We pretend to celebrate intelligence. We give awards to geniuses, share their quotes online, admire their achievements from a distance. But when real intelligence walks into a room and challenges the status quo, it's often silenced. Because it doesn't just offer clever solution, it challenges the rules themselves. It doesn't just point out what's broken, it questions why the system exists at all. And for people who have built their lives around those systems, that's terrifying. Your mind becomes too sharp for casual relationships, too curious for pre-approved narratives, too aware to ignore the contradiction. Emotionally, the toll is invisible but profound. You sit among people and feel more alone than you would in solitude. You crave someone who doesn't just listen but hears, who doesn't just understand your words but your meaning. But that person seems to exist only in your imagination. And the longer you wait, the more you begin to wonder if such resonance is even possible. You question your sanity. You question your place in the world. You wonder if maybe the crowd is right and you're the one who's broken. But you're not. That invisible sorrow, that ache for something deeper, it's not weakness. It's the signal of a mind that refuses to settle for the shallow. Schopenhauer saw this centuries ago. He understood that society follows a hidden code. Don't overthink. Don't question too much. Stay within the bounds of what's popular. Agree with the majority. Fit in. And intelligent people, true, reflective thinkers, naturally break that code. Not out of defiance but from a need to see clearly. They don't worship the collective voice. They don't seek comfort in consensus. Instead, they peer behind the curtain and expose what others pretend not to see. And that makes the herd nervous. When someone starts asking questions that don't have easy answers, the group turns on them. It's not logic, it's instinct. Every social space, whether a school, a workplace, or a dinner table, carries an unspoken rule: belong or be alone. And those who question too much, feel too deeply, or see too clearly are cast as outsiders. Not because they're wrong, but because they disrupt the illusion. Intelligence makes people uncomfortable because it pierces the surface. It shines a light on what others have worked hard to keep hidden. So you get labeled, not as wise or insightful, but as difficult, intense, unsociable. Not because you are any of those things, but because the truth you bring threatens the comfort others cling to. Look at the modern office. Innovation is praised in theory but punished in practice. Raise your voice to call out inefficiency or dishonesty, and you'll likely be dismissed as a troublemaker. Stay quiet and nod along, and you'll be rewarded for your cooperation. In school, it's much the same. Blind obedience earns praise. Thoughtful rebellion earns punishment. Even in supposedly open online spaces, the algorithm punishes depth. It favors outrage, simplicity, and repetition, not complexity, not quiet brilliance, not truth. So what do you do if you're one of those rare people whose mind refuses to shrink, whose thoughts won't simplify, whose heart feels the full spectrum of emotion in a world that prefers black and white? You adapt, you learn to camouflage. You teach yourself to smile when you're hurting, to stay silent when your mind is racing. Not because you want to, but because you must. Because every time you revealed your full self, the world responded with judgment or silence. And so you become smaller, not less intelligent, but more hidden. Not less emotional, but more guarded. The cost of that adaptation is profound. Your mind begins to carry the weight of unspoken thoughts. Your heart bears the ache of unshared feelings. You move through the world like a shadow, present but unseen. And eventually you stop expecting to be understood. You stop hoping for someone to say, "I see you." You just keep going. But underneath the performance, a quiet question lingers. Am I the only one? Is anyone else living with this invisible burden? You're not alone. What you feel isn't a defect, it's a sign. A sign of a rare consciousness trying to survive in a world that rewards conformity. Schopenhauer knew this feeling well. He didn't just describe it, he lived it. He wrote of the herd, of the instinctive need people have to blend in. Not because they're foolish, but because thinking for yourself is dangerous. It threatens the group's security. So when someone dares to question tradition, to challenge the easy narrative, they are not just dismissed, they are feared. It's not always overt. Sometimes rejection comes in silence, in the awkward pause after you say something real, in the eyes that shift away when your thoughts get too deep, in the laughter that feels forced when your questions make people uneasy. And eventually the message becomes clear: hide your mind or stand alone. And those who refuse to betray their own vision, those who keep asking questions, keep seeking truth, they pay that price, quietly, daily. But Schopenhauer didn't view this suffering as meaningless. He saw it as proof. Proof that you are seeing clearly. That your suffering isn't a malfunction but a sign of perception. The sharper your vision, the more you see what others deny. The deeper your heart, the more you feel what others suppress. And that kind of awareness doesn't earn applause. It earns exile. Because people don't want to face what you've seen. They don't want to reflect on what you reveal. They want to feel good, not real. Schopenhauer understood that true intelligence is a lonely path, but not a pointless one. He believed that solitude is not just where pain resides, it's where truth lives. He didn't offer the false comfort of success or acceptance. He offered something harder and more honest. The idea that the most intelligent people will often walk alone, not because they're broken, but because the world isn't built to hold them. And that loneliness, that aching space between you and others, is the space where clarity is born. This clarity often comes at the cost of belonging. When you can see the game for what it is, you can no longer play it. When you stop pretending, stop performing, stop chasing approval, you also stop fitting in. But in that solitude lies a strange kind of power. You become free, not because you escape society, but because you escape the need for it to understand you. Freedom doesn't arrive with applause. It doesn't come with company. It begins quietly, in the emptiness left behind after rejection. When you are no longer shaped by the approval of others, when their misunderstanding no longer alters your self-perception, you begin to recover something most people lose early in life: your full self, the one that existed before the masks, before the compromises, before you learned to dilute your thoughts for the sake of belonging. In solitude, you begin to ask different questions. Not just about the world, but about yourself. Not what's wrong with me, but what is this pain trying to show me? You start to see the pattern. The disconnection you feel isn't just loneliness, it's misalignment. You're not empty, you're unmatched. And that realization rewrites the entire narrative. Loneliness doesn't always signal lack. Sometimes it signals depth. Modern psychology is slowly catching up to what philosophers like Schopenhauer sensed centuries ago. A study published in the British Journal of Psychology found that highly intelligent individuals often report lower satisfaction from frequent socializing. It's not that they don't value people, it's that typical social interactions fail to meet their internal needs. Small talk can feel like static. Gossip, repetition, and emotional noise are exhausting. What they crave is resonance, depth, presence. They don't want to just talk, they want to connect. This creates a unique kind of loneliness, cognitive loneliness. You may be surrounded by people, involved in conversation, even admired, yet feel utterly unseen. Because what matters to you, the meaning behind the words, the nuance between the lines, the emotional truth beneath the performance, is invisible to most. You are not lonely because you are alone. You are lonely because your inner world goes unnoticed. This isn't a choice, it's neurological. Cognitive scientists like Dr. Thomas Suddendorf explain that our brains evolved in small, tribal environments. Our emotional and social instincts are designed for intimate, predictable circles. But the modern world demands that highly intelligent individuals operate far outside those boundaries. They think in abstraction, see patterns others miss, challenge norms others accept. They are no longer wired for tribal belonging, and the modern environment hasn't adjusted to accommodate them. The result is a misfit, not a failure, an evolutionary outlier. This misalignment creates strain. High intelligence often comes with emotional overstimulation. Imagine thinking in layers, noticing tiny emotional shifts in every voice, every glance, every silence. Imagine replaying a word, a pause, a raised eyebrow for hours. This isn't arrogance, it's sensitivity, and it can be overwhelming. Not because the world is cruel, but because it moves at a frequency that doesn't accommodate depth. The intelligent individual finds themselves caught between the hunger for understanding and the constant noise of misunderstanding. Children with high intellectual sensitivity are often punished for their differences early. They're told, stop overthinking, be normal, why can't you just enjoy yourself? The message they internalize is not that they are gifted, but that they are flawed. So they retreat. They learn not to speak, not to show emotion. They begin to monitor themselves, not to grow, but to disappear. This survival mechanism carries into adulthood. It affects relationships, career choices, even dreams. You want to connect, but you've learned it's safer to withhold. You want to be known, but you've grown used to invisibility. So you wait, hoping someone will notice the truth hidden behind your restraint. But most never do. Even in love, the pattern persists. Intelligent individuals often struggle with romantic connection, not because they lack feeling, but because their depth is rarely mirrored. They're misunderstood as cold, aloof, unfeeling, when in truth they are saturated with unexpressed complexity. They are not difficult to love, they are difficult to reach. Psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski described this intensity as overexcitability. It's not a disorder, it's a form of perception. A heightened sensitivity to intellectual, emotional, sensory, and imaginative stimuli. In simple terms, smart people don't just think more, they feel more. And that creates a constant friction with the ordinary. Ordinary is too loud, too dull, too empty. So they float in a kind of exile, longing but unsure what for. Here's what no one tells you: being unmatched isn't failure, it's evidence. Evidence that your mind operates differently, your heart asks more, your soul seeks truth over convenience. And while that can be isolating, it's also clarifying. You begin to see that your loneliness is not the absence of connection. It's the presence of depth in a shallow world. Still, there's another barrier to connection: envy. You would think that intelligence would draw respect, and at first it does, but admiration has a shadow. When someone shines too brightly, they don't just illuminate, they expose. And what they expose in others is insecurity. Your confidence, your insight, your clarity. These don't always land as gifts. To many, they feel like threats. They awaken discomfort people don't know how to name, so they project it as judgment. They call you arrogant, intimidating, weird, not because you are, but because they feel small in your presence. The Dunning-Kruger effect illustrates this dynamic. People with limited knowledge often overestimate their competence. They don't realize what they don't know. So when someone truly capable enters the room, it shatters their illusion. And instead of embracing the opportunity to learn, they reject the person who challenged them. You become the mirror they cannot bear to face. This has happened throughout history. Socrates was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth, when all he did was ask questions too penetrating for the powerful to tolerate. Galileo was punished for seeing stars differently. Tesla died in obscurity, touring in shame. These were not failures of intelligence. They were failures of society to receive intelligence without defensiveness. And that pattern continues. In modern offices, deep thinkers are often sidelined. In classrooms, they're discouraged. On social media, they're ignored or attacked, not because they are wrong, but because they make people uncomfortable. The world says it wants intelligence, but what it really wants is comfort, easy answers, pleasant distractions. So intelligence must compromise or be cast out, and many brilliant minds, unable to find welcome, learn to go silent, to shrink, to hide, not because they've run out of insight, but because they've run out of safe places to share it. But Schopenhauer again offers an alternative: solitude, not as exile but as sanctuary. He didn't romanticize loneliness, he dignified it. To him, solitude was the natural home of the noble mind. Not because they are better, but because they need stillness to hear themselves think. Society entertains. Solitude clarifies. True freedom, he believed, comes not from applause but from independence. Not from approval but from alignment. The ability to think without interruption, to feel without apology, to exist without compromise. That is the gift of being alone. Great ideas are born in that stillness. Art, insight, beauty, none of it comes from noise. It comes from quiet. Schopenhauer lived this truth. He was not widely loved in his time. He was not a celebrity philosopher. But he saw through the illusions of his era and chose clarity over comfort. He said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." And he meant it. Because when you no longer need the world to validate you, you can finally begin to live authentically. In solitude, you stop performing. You stop shrinking. You stop pretending to be less than you are. You reclaim your time, your energy, your thoughts. And as you sink deeper into that silence, you begin to hear the truth that was drowned out by the noise of belonging. You are not too much. You are just awake. In that awakening, your pain shifts. Loneliness stops being a wound and becomes a mirror. It reflects your inner landscape, unclouded by expectation. You start to notice things others can't: beauty in complexity, clarity in chaos, meaning in silence. And slowly you stop needing others to understand you. You become enough for yourself. This is not arrogance. This is integrity. It's choosing to be real over being liked. Choosing to feel fully, even when it hurts. Choosing to think freely, even when it isolates. That's what it means to live awake in a world that sleeps. To carry intelligence as a burden and as a gift. To endure misunderstanding not as punishment but as proof that you were never meant to blend in. So if you've ever felt like your thoughts are too heavy, your questions too persistent, your emotions too intense, know this. You are not broken. You are not a problem to fix. You are just built for depth in a world that survives on surface. That's not a flaw, that's your strength. And that strength, while it may isolate you, will also protect you. It will guide you to truth, to art, to wisdom. It will connect you not to crowds but to meaning, not to trends but to timelessness. It will lead you to others like you, not many but enough. The ones who speak the same unspoken language. The ones who don't just listen but understand. And when you find them, it won't be noise. It will be resonance, and it will be real. Until then, walk your path with courage. Let the world misunderstand you. Let it call you too much. Because every step you take alone is a step toward becoming who you truly are. And that journey, though lonely, is yours alone to take. It is not punishment. It is freedom. And freedom, as Schopenhauer knew, is the birthplace of a life lived